in 2019, the first time capsule buried by Stumpy Sanderson and his gang of mischievous working-class boys, and which was actually an old Watney's Party 7 can, was unearthed. Then in 2023, the second time capsule, which was an old Courage Jackpot Bitter Party can, was discovered. And now, Whistling 5 Anarchic Productions, in conjunction with the 1970s Cigarette Appreciation Club and Puffer Patterson's Benevolent Fund for Aging Thespians, proudly presents Series 2 of Stumpy Sanderson's 1970s stories, and the 22 stories found in that second time capsule. As narrated by Andrew Brammer. Bonjour, bon après-midi, et bonsoir. The story you are about to hear is narrated in the first person, because I, just like Stumpy, witnessed firsthand the momentous events which it describes. So, let's park up the rally chopper, dim the lava lamp, switch off that episode of Catweasel, finish up the plate of Vesta beef curry, crack open a can of Double Diamond, light up a mannequin cigar, and kick back, sit back, and listen in to the anarchic and outrageous japes, scrapes and capers of Stumpy Sanderson and his gang. For this story, we head back to 1979 for Stubble and Whiskers. Still being of comparatively small stature, and with smooth faces nowhere near ready for shaving, Stumpy Sanderson and I had first tried the wheeze of trying to gain underage admission to ex-certificate films by wearing false moustaches to a late-night local arts centre rescreening of The Vampire Lovers. The moustaches, though, had been far from convincing, resembling dark caterpillars rather than authentic facial hair, and it had only taken one look for the man at the ticket counter to point-blank refuse us entry and tell us to scram. Various other tactics had also been used unsuccessfully by us at the same venue, and also at the two cinemas across the border in Luton, including such ruses as trying to forge documents in the style of Donald Pleasance's character in The Great Escape to try to show we were actually 18, and also getting some older lads who had left school a couple of years before to buy tickets for us. That attempt had ended in a particularly miserable failure, as, just as the woman in the ticket booth was issuing the 7 tickets for a rescreening of Lust for a Vampire, she had noticed Stumpy and I shiftily loitering at the back of the group, and as she pointed at us and asked in a very loud voice as to how old we were, the crowd of older lads had parted like the Red Sea, and the woman had been totally unconvinced with our answers, and we knew that the game was up. But now, a couple of months after that particular embarrassment, we felt far more confident. This was not because we had suddenly shot up in height, nor had we suddenly developed age-increasing whiskers, but because we had now found a brilliant source of far more realistic false moustaches. These had been found in an advert in the back of a monthly stage magazine subscribed to by Puffer Patterson, that portly member of our gang, the boy of 1,000 faces and voices, and the greatest thespian of his generation. The advert was for theatrical-grade false moustaches, beards, and hairpieces. And it was with great excitement that Stumpy and I both sent off our postal orders, and then, 28 days later, duly received in the post some very impressive brown painter's brush moustaches. When they heard about our plan, our school's two greatest grinning idiots, Smiler Morton and Gawper Allsop, said they would also like to join us and get in on the act, as they were as keen as we were for our planned attempt to gain entry to an upcoming cinema rescreening of Emmanuel II, The Joys of a Woman. They had told Stumpy and I that they would be using a similar strategy to ours, but on an even more impressive scale. If only we had questioned at the time what this strategy was. On the evening of the film's showing, Stumpy and I caught the bus into Luton earlier than Smiler and Gawper, as the plan was for us all to meet up later in the cinema foyer. To get used to our impressive new moustaches, we had worn them on the bus, and then to test them in a dress rehearsal, we went into a Burney Inn and ordered 2 lagers. To our great joy and very pleasant surprise, the barmaid didn't even bat an eyelid or ask our age. So now, brimming with confidence and after downing our lagers, we set off for the cinema. Upon arriving, Stumpy said, "The others should be here soon, but we may as well get our tickets now. What do you think?" "Good idea," I said, and after waiting until a reedy and furtive character in a beige rainmac and a clearly amorous courting couple had bought their tickets, we approached the ticket counter, which was being manned by a gum-chewing, cool-looking and dimpled dude who must have been in his early 30s. "2 tickets for the Emmanuel film, please," said Stumpy. The dude looked at us and, breaking into a broad grin, said, "They're impressive moustaches, lads, but I've still got to ask, how old are you?" 18, I replied, as cool and calm as possible, but to add authenticity, with a quizzical look as to why he had even asked. And then, just for good measure, "I'm 19 in a couple of months, and my friend will be the month after that." He just chewed his gum for a bit, digesting what I'd just said, and then, still grinning, nodded, "Fair enough," and he was just about to print our tickets, when suddenly, looking behind us, he burst out laughing and said, "You gotta be joking!" And we spun round to see Smiler and Gawper, who had appeared in the foyer. The sight that we beheld was astonishing. It was Smiler Morton, with a swarthy and thick mass of peppery white and grey whiskers covering his cheeks, chin and upper neck, in shocking contrast to the colour of his shrub-like darkish brown hair, and Gawper Allsop, sporting a huge great ginger biblical beard, which was in even more shocking contrast to his bag of worms-styled Whitby jet black hair. As we stood open-mouthed, Stumpy exclaiming, "What the heck?" Smiler sported that huge, great, never-ending crescent wedge of a grin beneath his artificial stubble, and Gawper, still looking like the loose-limbed lout he was, even with his distinguished giant beard, blurted out to us, "Hey lads, sorry we're late." At this, the ticket bloke's grin grew even wider and his gum chewing more pronounced as he pointedly asked Stumpy and I, "Friends of yours?" And then, in the next breath, to Smiler and Gawper, "And how old are you two?" 47, said Smiler, grinning broadly. Whilst we never did gain entry to Emmanuel 2, The Joys of a Woman, we were able to watch it in later years on Betamax video format. And at the post-mortem for our latest failed attempt to access an X-rated film, Stumpy and I learnt that Gawper had sourced his great ginger beard from a local joke shop, whilst Smiler's grand plan had involved him collecting, every morning for a week, his granddad's whiskers, which his granddad, who lived with the Morton family, always left in the sink bowl, sticking this collection of whiskers to his chin, cheeks, and other parts of his face with airfix glue on the day of the film to try and make himself look like a swarthy individual. Smiler had of course failed to notice the fatal flaw in his master plan, namely that his dark brown hair was a completely different colour to his granddad's white and grey peppery whiskers. Thank you for listening to this episode of Stumpy Sanderson's 1970s Stories. And please don't forget to check out the other stories from Series 2 and Series 1. You can also follow Stumpy Sanderson's 1970s Stories on Facebook, where you can keep up to date with all the news about live shows and other Stumpy events. There's also the website, www.stumpysanderson.co.uk, and the Stumpy Sanderson's 1970s Stories YouTube channel. And you can get in touch with me at andrew@stumpysanderson.co.uk. Until the next story, au revoir et bonne nuit, and keep grooving.
Yeah. This podcast has been recorded using a DIY punk rock philosophy. Yeah.